Well, good evening once again. Day 148 of the Biden administration. Air Force One has indeed touched down. The president is back on U.S. soil after 8 days overseas, his first foreign trip since taking office. Today in Switzerland, he held that much anticipated summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin.
As I said outside, I think it's always better to meet face to face.
That moment was followed by a wild and chaotic scene as reporters from both countries' press corps jockeyed for position before being tossed out so the actual talks could begin behind closed doors. Meeting was shorter than expected. At about 3+ hours, both leaders emerged to hold separate back-to-back news conferences. Putin went first, followed by Biden.
I think there was no hostility, quite the contrary. We don't share the same positions in many areas, but I think that both of these sides showed a willingness to understand one another. The talks were quite constructive. President Biden is an experienced person.
I told President Putin my agenda is not against Russia or anyone else. It's for the American people. It's not about just going after Russia when they violate human rights. It's about who we are. We need to have some basic rules of the road that we can all abide by. I did what I came to do. The tone of the entire meetings was good, positive. There wasn't any strident action taken.
The two leaders agreed to open talks on arms control. They said their respective ambassadors would be returning to their posts in Moscow and Washington. Putin defended his nation's provocative moves in Ukraine, of course, while Biden raised the issue of Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed, those two Americans now imprisoned in Russia. Biden says he also brought up the growing number, the alarming number of cyber attacks here in the U.S., an issue Putin seemed to shrug off.
As for cybersecurity, we reached an agreement, chiefly that we will start negotiations on that. Most of the cyber attacks in the world are carried out from the cyber realm of the United States. In second place is Canada. Russia's not on the list.
Certain critical infrastructure should be off limits to attack, period, by cyber or any other means. I gave them a list. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, 16 specific entities, 16 defined as critical infrastructure under U.S. policy, from the energy sector to our water systems. I pointed out to him we have significant cyber capability, and he knows it. He doesn't know exactly what it is, but it's significant. And if, in fact, they violate these basic norms, we will respond. Cyber.
President Biden also brought up the case of the Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, who was poisoned with a nerve agent, is now serving a 2-year sentence in a penal colony outside Moscow because he sought treatment for the poisoning in Germany. When asked about Navalny during his news conference, Putin refused to mention Navalny by name. That's common for him, dismissing questions about his treatment. And in the spirit of whataboutism, he then referred to racial unrest in the U.S. ABC News correspondent Rachel Scott wasn't having it and would not let it end there.
The list of your political opponents who are dead, imprisoned, or jailed is long. Alexei Navalny's organization calls for free and fair elections, an end to corruption, and you have now prevented anyone who supports him to run for office. So my question is, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
The organization that you mentioned has publicly called for a mass disorder. They have publicly called for breaking the law. America just recently had very severe events after well-known events after the killing of an African American. And an entire movement developed known as Black Lives Matter. What we saw was disorder, destruction, violations of the law, etc. We feel sympathy for the United States of America, but we don't want that to happen on our territory.
There was some classic Putin on display today. He then tried to imply that the arrest and prosecution of the 1-6 rioters and insurrectionists was somehow similar to human rights violations.
As for who is killing whom or throwing whom in jail, people came to the U.S. Congress with political demands. 400 people. Over 400 people had criminal charges placed on them. They face prison sentences of up to 20, maybe even 25 years. They're being called domestic terrorists.
That's a ridiculous comparison. It's one thing for literally criminals to break through cordon, go into the Capitol, kill a police officer, and be held unaccountable. And it is for people objecting and marching on the Capitol and saying, you are not allowing me to speak freely.
President Biden later was asked if he discussed the potential consequences should Navalny wind up dead in prison.
I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia.
Jonathan Lemire, we're guessing you are fresh as a daisy. Can't thank you enough for joining us by telephone from Andrews. Knowing something about these trips home from summits, sometimes unnamed senior officials have a way of making their way back in the aircraft to the press compartment to give an assessment of the summit just concluded. What is the assessment from that traveling team tonight?
Good evening, Brian. And yes, it's been a long day. And I'm calling you from a place you indeed know well, just under the wing here of Air Force One and Andrews Air Force Base. The White House team has certainly conveyed that they are happy with how the week has gone, including today. Like there was never going to be, they had set these expectations in advance, major deliverables coming from the President's summit with Vladimir Putin in Geneva today. But there were some areas of agreement. The countries have agreed to return their respective ambassadors to the other nation's capital. Some first steps on things like arms control and and the strategic future of the two nations. Those are good things. But the president himself said, we'll have to see whether or not Vladimir Putin and Russia's misbehavior, their destructive behavior, actually changes. Biden welcomed the chance behind closed doors to deliver messages to Putin on things like Ukraine and cyber hacking and election interference. But then when we saw Putin at his news conference afterwards, he did not really accept any responsibility for these things and certainly did not suggest that his actions would change. But it was a highly anticipated summit that indeed began with that shoving match that you mentioned, trying the two press corps, Russian and American, tried to squeeze into a small space to get a better photograph, shout a question to the leaders. I ended up having to put a shoulder into a Russian security guard in order to get in. And sadly, not every member of the U.S. press pool was able to enter that room, which, of course, is not the ideal. But that moment there, with the tension around it, sort of encapsulated the stakes for this meeting.
I'll go ahead and say not your first thrown shoulder, and it won't be your last. Julia, over to you. What did you make of how today went, and did you share our assessment? There were some vintage Putin moments there today.
Oh, absolutely. Down to the Tolstoy quote that got everyone's attention here, right? Where he said that happiness doesn't exist and that it's just a mirage on the horizon. I did think, however, that he was a little different today in the sense that he seemed kind of impressed with Biden. He said some very nice things about him. He even mentioned that Biden told him some stories about his mother, which was, vintage Biden. And Putin made sure to stick it to Biden right before the meeting when he gave his interview to Keir Simmons at NBC. And he said, yeah, Biden's fine. He's a man of the system. But Trump is so colorful and interesting and is so smart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have won the presidency. And here he came away and had some warm words for President Biden. Otherwise, yeah, it was vintage Putin. Just a lot of word salad, a lot of whataboutism, which if your viewers are not familiar with the term, it's when you are asked about something you've done wrong, you come back with, well, what about you? It's something that the Russians have been doing for well over 100 years and clearly have no plans to stop now.
Claire McCaskill, trigger warning, your favorite guy was a guest on Hannity tonight. We'll play a bit and discuss on the other side.
We didn't get anything. We gave a very big stage to Russia. I think it was a good day for Russia. I don't see what we got out of it. I got along really well with him. Nobody was tougher in Russia. We had a great shot at having an unbelievable relationship with Russia.
So, Claire, we're just going to overlook the national humiliation we all watched in Helsinki and go right to the question of how you think President Biden did today.
Well, it was no Helsinki. And Americans, I think, who are paying attention are relieved tonight that we have a president on the world stage, both at the G7 and in today's meetings with Putin, that firmly put his foot down on behalf of them, not on behalf of Putin. I thought it was managed very well. As you know, Brian, a lot of this is how they manage the images, how the images are portrayed. And whoever figured out that they needed to get Putin by himself in front of a free press, that was good. I mean, Rachel Scott dropped the mic. What a great question. And there were others. And Putin's not used to that. Now, he didn't lose his cool or anything. I mean, it's not like he melted down. But it clearly was one of those days where Putin looked alone on that stage and he was facing the kind of press he never has to face. That alone, I think, made it a big winner for the United States of America.